Let's make a start, shall we? Good morning. That's not bad. Welcome to the NLP at Work conference. I'm really pleased to be here today. This is the culmination of sort of just under 12 months hard work by lots of people. And I'm really kind of quite excited about what we're going to be doing today. This all really started just under 12 months ago when we at Evolution were having a planning meeting, a strategic meeting for looking at our goals for the next year. And one of the things that we visioned, we had this vision of running an NLP conference at the Eden Project. And look, we're here. It's absolutely fantastic. We're going to be talking about all kinds of different things today around NLP at Work. We've got a range of really interesting speakers, and I hope they're going to say interesting things as well, which I know that what most of them are going to be saying, so that's going to be really good. And one of the key things that we're going to be talking about today is, well, let me ask you a couple of questions. How many of you think that the world of work is changing? Okay, and how many of you think that the pace of that change is accelerating, so it's getting faster? Brilliant, because I believe that as well. And a lot of what we're going to be doing today is talking about change. A lot of the people are talking about change within their work, but also within themselves. So the way that they've changed themselves to improve and enhance the performance of their jobs and what they're doing at work generally. So change is kind of the theme. And it says welcome. I missed that one. So change is the theme for today. And somebody said to me recently that the only constant thing in work today is change. So the only thing that we can guarantee is what we're doing today, we're going to be doing differently or doing something completely different in 12 months, 18 months' time. So really it's how we're going to deal with that change. And NLP is a really good set of tools and techniques to help you do that. When I was putting this sort of introduction together, I came up with one of my favourite phrases, which I'm sure you've all heard before, which is, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So if you continue to do the same things, you'll get the same results. And I was trying to find the sort of origin of this phrase. So I was looking at all the people who'd used this as a quote. And it's been attributed to people like Albert Einstein, to Henry Ford, and to Mark Twain. And I was kind of a bit frustrated about that because I wanted to find the original source. But then I thought, actually, if all these sort of really renowned people are using the same phrase, then maybe that's okay. Maybe it's really important to think about it in those terms. And I think that used to work. I think it used to be okay that years ago, if you did the same things in the same way, time after time, you got the same results. You got the same level of service, or you got the same amount of sales, or the same products at the end of it. The problem is, I don't think this applies anymore because the context that we work in is changing around us. So if you always do what you always did, you don't necessarily get what you always got in terms of outcome. So perhaps we need to think about how we're going to do things differently. So why NLP at Work? Why this conference? Well, we've been involved in NLP for quite a long time. I've been delivering NLP courses for 15, 16 years now. And it's always had that kind of therapeutic process. And we decided right at the start that we're going to apply NLP in a work environment. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a little bit of what NLP is and a little bit of its history and see how that applies at work. Because what I wanted to do was to bring people together who apply NLP in their jobs and get results and start to sort of understand perhaps how that's all going to help you in your job. So hopefully at the end of today, as you've heard what we've got to say and you've seen what the people are presenting, then it might resonate with some of the things, some of the problems that you're finding in your environment and perhaps some of the changes that you're going through, and look at how this can help you change in your environment. So, what is NLP? Well, you probably all know that it stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. But what does that mean? There's lots of definitions of NLP, and I'll talk about a few of those in a few minutes. But initially what I wanted to do was just look at splitting this down into its components, really. So neuro means the way that we think. And in NLP terms, it's about how we take information in, how we process it and make sense of the world around us. The linguistic bit is about how we communicate that sense of the world to other people and to ourselves. Do any of you talk to yourselves? I wonder what tone of voice you use when you talk to yourselves, but no, perhaps we won't go there. And the programming is how that internal dialogue affects your behavior and therefore the results that you get. So to give you an example, if you say to yourself, I'll never be able to do that, what's likely to happen? You're probably not going to be able to do it. Or if I can, or if I can't. As Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. So the way that we think has a big impact on the results that we get. And I watched a TV program before the Athens Olympics, if you can remember back that far, and it kind of came back to me because of all the sort of publicity and things about the London Olympics for next year. And I was watching this program before the Athens Olympics, and the BBC presenters were interviewing a number of the Great Britain team, athletics squad, who were going to be competing in the Games. And they were talking to Paula Radcliffe, who at the time was really at the top of her game, and the expectations in Britain was not whether she's going to win gold, but whether it was going to be a world record time. And they were interviewing her, and she was saying, it's going to be really hot in Athens, and I can't run in heat. Does anybody remember what happened? She crashed out partway through, never even completed it, let alone winning it or getting a world record. In the same program that he was interviewing Kelly Holmes, Dame Kelly Holmes, as she is now. And Kelly Holmes at the time was sort of seen to be over the hill, really, was on a kind of downward slope as far as her career was concerned. They thought that she'd peaked. And she said, I can't wait to get to Athens. The whole of my life has been focused on these 2 weeks, and I'm really, really excited and looking forward to it. Anybody remember what happened? Yes, she won 2 golds against all expectations. And at that kind of elite athlete level, that internal dialogue has a massive impact on their performance. But it's the same for us. If you walk into work in the morning thinking, I'm going to have a really bad day today, guess what? It's not going to be the best day of your life. So having some control, I guess, over that sort of internal process for yourself is going to have a big impact. But also, the way that you communicate to other people is going to have an impact. So, if you're having a discussion with somebody, the way that you have that discussion, the way that you'll put your points across is going to have an impact to the outcome, isn't it? You've had good communications and bad communications, and a lot of the time, it's about how you're trying to get your sense of the world across to other people. So let's have a look at where NLP came from. These 2 people here, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, came up with this brilliant idea, and like lots of brilliant ideas, was very simple. And that was, if we can copy brilliant people, if we can do what they do and behave in the way that they behave, maybe we can be as good as them without having to have all the training and the experience and spend all the time doing what they do. And because they were interested in personal development and therapeutic change at the time, they copied the behaviors of a number of really renowned therapists. So there was Virginia Satir, who worked with groups of people, couples and families and so on. There was Milton Erickson, who was, and probably still is, renowned as one of the best hypnotherapists ever in terms of the results he could get from people who no one else could work with. There was Gregory Bateson, who was a British anthropologist, and Fritz Perls, who developed Gestalt therapy. And what they suddenly noticed was that although these people were very different, they worked in different ways, in different therapeutic modalities, and they were different people, there were certain things that they all did that was the same. And so they distilled all of these behaviors, these thought patterns and ideas from studying all of these people and called it NLP. If you had to pick a country in the world where this was developed, which country would you pick? America, absolutely. And if you had to pick a state, California, absolutely. And if you had to pick a decade, 60s, yeah. It was actually 1972, but California was still in the 60s then, so, you're right if you say that. And they developed this process they call, or this set of tools and techniques they called neuro-linguistic programming. And when you realize that John Grinder was a professor of linguistics and Richard Bandler was a graduate student into IT and programming, you can kind of see where the name came from a little bit. It made a big kind of impact in the therapeutic world in America in the early 70s, because at the time, psychoanalysis was probably big business. A lot of people were going through that, using that as a process. And it took a long time in a lot of cases. So it might take you years to kind of overcome problems that you had, which was great news for the therapist, because they didn't have to do a lot of marketing, because they'd got a client for a long time. And it might take, let's say, 3 months to overcome a spider phobia. NLP came along with the fast phobia cure, which does what it says on the tin, and maybe in 20 minutes you'd be cured of a spider phobia, which could have taken months before. So it took the therapeutic world by storm. It very quickly made its transition into sports psychology, because as we've just seen, your performance is very strongly affected by what you think and how you feel. And then in the late 80s and early 90s, NLP started to make its inroads into the business world. And I first came across it in 1994 when I was actually on a team building facilitators course, and we spent a day on NLP. And at the end of that day, I remember walking out of the room thinking, wow, I've got to find out more about this stuff. So I trained as a practitioner, then a master practitioner, then as a trainer, and as a master trainer. Along the way, I became a clinical hypnotherapist, and because I got absolutely fascinated at the way this affects your performance and the outcomes. We ran our first NLP training course in 1996, and we practically had to drag people in off the street. We said there were clients already, and we had to say, look, come on, trust us, you will get something out of this, or you can have your money back. Now, we're running practitioner courses 2-3 times a year. We run them for the fire service, for teachers, for doctors, dentists, whole range of people. Because NLP has become a lot more kind of mainstream in the sense that people are more aware of it. I was just talking to somebody earlier on about how local government over the last couple of years has picked up and started using NLP in a much stronger way than they've ever done before. And we decided right back in 1996 that we were going to focus on the business applications of NLP, the work applications, rather than the therapeutic ones, because we believed, and still believe, that we can get, in a work environment, a huge amount of benefit out of these processes, tools, and techniques. Because the most important thing about NLP is that it is not magic. And it's not just West Coast psychobabble. It's a set of tools and techniques, pragmatic set of tools and techniques that can really help you in your work life. And here's some quick definitions of what NLP is. Richard Bandler said it's an attitude and a methodology that leaves behind it a trail of techniques, which is kind of typical Richard Bandler if you read any of his books. But the attitude that he's talking about is experimentation. It's flexibility, which is where that if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got comes in. Because if the world is changing around you, you have to be flexible. You have to change what you do to meet the situation that you're in. And so that's what that attitude. The techniques are the tools and processes that you use to be flexible. I don't know how you pronounce this, but it's Alex von Eude, perhaps. NLP is the systemic study of human communication, which kind of illustrates that, certainly he believes, that it's about process. It's not magic. It's not an art. It's somewhere between an art and a science, really. Robert Dilts says that NLP is whatever works, which is great, because that means you can call anything NLP if you get a result from it. But it also illustrates the kind of eclectic mixture, because NLP has nicked stuff from all sorts of different areas, from all sorts of different therapy and so on. And the one that I like is NLP is like jelly. Hard to pin down, but it tastes nice and you know it when you see it. Especially if it's an orange one, because that's kind of really bright. So what's going to happen today? Well, basically today, what we've got is a group of people from all sorts of different work backgrounds and different environments. So we've got people from the NHS, we've got people from education, we've got project managers, we've got a whole range of different people today who are going to come up here and tell their story. So they're going to have a 30 minutes to tell you about how they've applied NLP in their jobs, in their work, and what benefits they've had from it, and what they've done in terms of how they've applied it. There'll be a 30-minute presentation followed by a 10-minute opportunity to ask questions. So please ask questions. We've got plenty of opportunity for that. And also, during the breaks, we have a speaker's corner over here. So all of the speakers will be in the corner, which is where they should be, perhaps. We're going to be in the corner over there, and you will have the opportunity to ask any questions or just chat to them about what you've heard or about what you're thinking or what people are likely to say as they go through. So we've got a 30-minute presentation, 10 minutes for questions, then there's 5 minutes of changeover time, so you've got time to stretch your legs, get a bit of fresh air, go to the toilet, which is just across the corridor there, before we start the next presentation. We'll have a break for coffee this morning, we'll have lunch, and then we'll have a break this afternoon, and we're aiming to be away no later than 4:30 today. Those of you who are listening intently at that point will realise that no later than also implies earlier than, so we'll do what we do today.